Welcome to Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber, to better understand their buyers, what motivates them, and what they hate that vendors do. It's time to unmute your mic. Are you ready? All right, welcome back to another episode of Audience First. As always, we have a very special guest in the house. We have the one and only Zachary Hyde. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I was excited about today's episode because of what's coming up. So I'm actually on my third cup of coffee right now. So I'm pretty amped to
All
get
right.
into this and get some shit done.
Love it. We're all about getting shit done. And before we get into the fire and all amped up, how about you tell us, Zachary, who you are, what do you do, and why the hell do you do it?
Yeah. So I probably don't have a very normal route into this industry. I didn't grow up with the computer, and I grew up in Oklahoma, climbing on oil well heads and throwing rocks at trains and stuff. And it barely graduated high school. Decided I wanted to join the Army, blow shit up and jump out of planes. So I joined, went infantry, went to the Rangers, and again, had no interest in this industry whatsoever. And then managed to land smack dab at ground zero of the Asian BTC worm, which most people know, Operation Buckshot Yankee. And it was, all hands on deck. It didn't matter the background. It was, hey, get in here. We're going to teach you how to, quarantine these machines. We're going to teach you how to identify, what's going on, how to wipe them, how to clean it, how to log it. And still didn't have any interest in the tech itself. But I just loved how fucking high stress it was and how crazy it made everybody. And I was like, oh, this is really something. And so I dug in a little deeper and got injured. And at the time I was in Kandahar, Afghanistan, and my signal officer came up and he's like, hey, I have a extra security plus voucher. Do you want to take it? And I said, yeah, sure. So went in Kandahar, Afghanistan, went and took security plus. Took it so fast I got audited by CompTIA, and but worked my way through that. Got back to Garrison, back to the States, and they said, hey, congrats. We need a new network engineer. We're going to send you. You're going to take all the Cisco stuff. So I went and did CCNA security, CCNP, CCNA voice, all of that stuff. Got back, did it a couple months, and my boss, who sat in the position of the sizzle role in our Ranger battalion, he decided he was going to do something else. I was the only one there. So I'm 23, 24 years old. They said, hey, you are sitting in this role. Had no idea what I was doing. Just jumped into it, jumped right into the fire. Had a great time doing it, and did a couple more deployments, ran a few task forces across Afghanistan doing that. And then came here to brag with the Special Operations Command, to a special missions unit, and actually moved into that director of IT position, innovating the shit out of things, and got to do a little bit of advisory work with then VP Joe Biden. I got to advise Masoud Barzani, who was the Kurdish president at the time, on their risk posture and their networking and things like that. And then finally wrapped up at Army Forces Command, as security advisor for the Army's First Corps to 4-star General Garrett. At that point, that's when I sent my email around the world that I sent accidentally in a moment of passion, and closed a $4.9 million sale of Motorola radios. I wouldn't advise it. I did get my ass chewed, but it did work. And at that point, I kind of reached the intersection of realizing, across 8-9 trips around the world in all these corners, right? The same rule applies, and that is no one gives a shit about cybersecurity. They don't want to talk about it. They want to avoid it. But at the same time, being able to communicate it properly has, astronomical results. And so I decided, hey, I'm going to jump ship. I'm going to forsake all of that. I'm not going to get out and go the practitioner route. I'm going to flip, and now I do direct response strategy for vendors, and that's where I sit today. So definitely a big leap, jump from one side of the fence to another. But it's definitely given me a very weird grasp of how it works on both sides. But yeah, it's great. So
What excites you about that shift that you took in your career to double down on direct response and helping vendors out with that kind of tactic?
so seeing really well living it and seeing the consequences of not maintaining a good risk posture. I know you and I, we came from different routes. I never got threatened by Chris to be tased. But
Mhm.
I also, had to carry heads out in bags because our comms went down because we didn't have good practice. And so I saw very visceral experiences of what happens when you have good and bad security. And so for me, it was very it gave me momentum to say, I know what these vendors are dealing with. I know how it felt when they interacted with me. And I know it's not an easy job to do, but it's important. Like what they have is crucial to practitioners, right? To being successful. So I just really wanted to help communicate that from the perspective I had of like, this is, you have something they need. Don't be afraid to sell it, right? Like you need to sell it. They need it. I need to help you break through those messaging roadblocks and actually connect with those buyers. So,
Why do you think there's this massive disconnect between, the go-to-market professionals that working for vendors, not even the go-to-market professionals, I'd argue, uh, professionals across all the, departments, working for vendors are so disconnected from buyers and the way they communicate with them?
so I think, well, it's twofold. I think it's a problem both on the vendor side, but also on the buyer side. Um, And speaking from the vendor, um, everything everything that a vendor does, regardless of what member of the team, and I think we talk go to market teams, but like one of the big pet peeves I have is like talking to people, and it's like, well, this is a sales task. The SDRs need to handle this. This a marketing task. But if you look at like the American Heritage Dictionary definition of marketer, it's somebody who advertises and sells a product to their market, right? So at the end of the day, you all have the same fucking job. The problem is you have moved from this concept of negotiation, of you know identifying, having a very clear vision of what it is you do, why you do it, and what it is you offer, and to who. And you've moved into this mindset of win-win, of competitive bargaining. We just need to close the deal as fast as possible because we don't have actionable goals. We don't have something that is ingrained in the buyer's world, right? And we can talk vision and purpose later, but it's very much a mindset within the organization. The Oxford Dictionary in the '70s, I think, had the best definition of negotiation. That is two or more parties coming to agreement with all parties having the right to veto. And over the past 6 decades, big Ivy League brains who've taken over these companies, they've bastardized that and they've removed that piece. Okay, we've removed the right for the buyers to say, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't want this, and we've stuck to the system of just get them to the yes as soon as possible, even if we have to compromise our value to do it.
You've called out quote unquote empathetic marketing as a credibility killer when it's done wrong.
Mhm.
What makes you kind of cringe when you hear that phrase?
Um, it's very easy to sniff out canned empathy, even to an average buyer, average negotiator. You don't have to be trained to identify when somebody is doing it canned, right? So um coming out and saying, well, we want to market with empathy, but we don't really have it in place. We don't have a solid vision in place of what we're doing. And so we clearly are pushing them toward an objective. Most of the time, it's either scanning your badge, RSA, or getting onto our list, or booking a demo. You're not. You can say you're going with empathy all day long, but the things you think that are subtle, they're really not. Right. The way you talk, the way you ask questions, how you lead with verb led questions, and try to manipulate and position me to where it's uncomfortable for me to back out as the buyer. Um, it's really cringe to just see you say, like, this is how we market. This is our foundation, and what we believe in. Like, you can't sit here and say, that's why I have a big issue with the phrase mission over profits. Like, it's a good phrase in theory, but none of you are fucking doing it if that's the way you approach empathy, right? You don't have a clear vision of what you're going to do. So you have no way to actually get into the world of your adversary, of your buyer, and actually relate to them on any level that's scalable, at least.
Why do vendors struggle to empathize? What are you seeing in more detail that makes you think, a lot of vendors are going to show up emotionally tone deaf, whether it's online or even at RSA? Let's kind of break that down.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes back again to a clearly defined vision of what it is you're doing and who it is you're doing it for. It's very easy because we operate as people hate this being the reality, but we live every decision, every negotiation operates in the emotional plane. Even if you're like, well, I make all my choices on rational data, but it was emotion that got you to that point. And so I don't think anybody on that floor in their booth, unless you're a sociopath, you have a basic understanding what empathy is on a basic human level. The problem is you're going into it, and again, I think it's not so much on the teams on the floor; it's the systems that they're given and they're expected to work with, that there's no empathy baked into that, right? And there's no empathy baked in because you don't have a clear mission and purpose that's set in your adversary's world. I mean, what's the typical mission of a team going to RSA? Well, I ask, and I'm going to hear things like, well, we want to scan X amount of badges, or we want to collect X amount of leads, or we want to book X amount of demos. And that's, well, first of all, those aren't even goals. Those are results, which you can't control. Those are not that's if you are trying to aim for those, then you're dead in the water and you shouldn't even go. Like, your mission shouldn't be grounded in we, it shouldn't be grounded in I, it should be grounded in your adversary, in the buyer, in the prospect, right? I'm selling a GRC compliance tool. It's not, our mission is to get 50 people interested in our product and our dashboard so we can book these demos. No, it's our mission is we want to help buyers eliminate fatigue. We want to help buyers eliminate audit stress, and we're doing that through X, Y, and Z. And at
Mhm.
that point, now you're in the adversary's world. Now you're in your buyer's world, and you're always safe. Like, you're never in danger, really, if you're in the buyer's world. But to get there, you have to have that mission and purpose. And a lot of folks, they can even get over that hump, right? A buyer comes to the booth, and it's a good question of, like, what's going on in your world today that brought you here, right? That's a great question. It sounds staged, but I've dealt with multinational $1 billion negotiations that were just as simple as that, right? There's nothing. We're cyber folks. We like complicating things. If it's too
Mhm.
easy, it doesn't work. But you got them in your world. And but what do they do then, right? Well, this is what I've got going on. This is what I'm stressing over, and they go back to that system, right? They have the system. This is what you're going to say. So the buyer, it lays out, he gives you a wide open door to be empathetic. And you say, oh, I understand. Well, do you want to come look at this and see this tool and see a demo of it? Okay, well, now you completely negated everything you did. That's not empathy, right? You got in the world and then you shifted it back to putting it on you. And that all comes down to, you didn't stick to that mission and that purpose that you should have had set in place before you you engage.
So can I break this down a little bit more deeply? How do you get to that mission? Let's be a little prescriptive here because it's easy to say,
Mm.
it's harder to do. How do you do that repeatedly so that you're massaging that muscle and getting used to really understanding how to frame those questions for better conversation, for better understanding, and then for better output?
Yeah. So I know one of the conversations we had offline, where I talked about, you know, a big complaint that I hear is like, we don't know how to empathize at scale, right? We don't know how to know exactly what our buyers are saying. Even if you collect all the data, and that's dangerous. Like I'm a data guy myself, but buyers' needs and buyers' problems aren't static, right?
Yeah.
We have people that are listening to this episode who are hearing something you or I say, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense," and then they walk out their door and something else happens, and then it's completely gone and nothing we said matters. So for me, it always comes down to, well, let's break through the dilettante bullshit of be everything to everyone. Let's not even worry about that. Let's get down to the very foundation of what connects you with that buyer. And for me, your business, right? Three most important things to a business: sales, margins, and profits. You don't get anywhere without sales. Your margins are the only reason you can invest in R&D, you can innovate, you can advertise, and then profits, you can fluff your sales numbers, you can fluff your revenue, but profits speak for themselves. If you can't do payroll, then I know you're not successful. So rather than try to connect as vendor and buyer, if you're having that issue as far as confidence, don't don't try to figure out how to scale and be 10,000 buyers. Rather, focus on what 10,000 buyers are stressing every night because they're afraid to lose, which is their money. They're a business, right? And when you have that foundation, I'm not saying you go in and, hey, I'm a business, you're a business. Let's talk business. But now you have that confidence to say, okay, I have I know I can build my way up from there. Well, how are they making those sales? Okay, well, they're a company selling mid-grade pharmaceuticals to senior citizens. So I know we need to target it like this. We need to do it like this. When we build that mission and that purpose, we know now who we're talking to, we know what we're doing, and we can stick inside that. And I like I said, I've worked with massive negotiations where every single person that got on the phone call in that decision chain and that journey had a different we had a different buyer, we have a different mission and purpose for each one, right? It's going to change depending on who you're talking to, how you're trying to move that forward. But if you're scaling like that on something that's very common language across the board, it's easier to find the empathetic ground. I'll tell you a real world example. um, when I was in Sulaymaniyah, Iraq, we had a massive denial of service attack. It took us down for 5 hours. And at the time, we had multiple teams on the ground who were engaged in contact with the Islamic State in Syria. And we lost comms. And at that point, I dealt with the situation. We got back up, and thankfully, we didn't have any catastrophic fallout from that. But when I got flown back to my headquarters and had to sit in front of my command team, it never was about, well, this happened, and I was working with Cisco, and they were really understanding of my stress levels, and they really talked me through it. That wasn't a concern with them. The concern was, what the hell are you going to do to ensure we don't have this conversation again? That this is fixed. That right there, that's empathy, because like you're not my therapist, right? You're here to solve my problem because you understood exactly what was at stake for me, not because you lived the life. I know you can't live the life, but
Yeah,
you understand it at that granular level and what I'm trying to protect.
sure. But do you think there's kind of a risk in oversimplifying empathy, into, like, revenue alignment? Like, just because we all care about margins and, what you earlier mentioned doesn't mean we really understand each other's internal worlds. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I mean, and that's very valid. Like Alfred Korzybski, who preached, the map is not the territory, right? Like you and I could have the same we could live through the same experience, but we got there completely different. You talk like the Andromeda effect. Like if you're sitting on the
Mhm.
beach, Danny, and staring up at the sky, and I'm running by you, and we look up at the same time and look at the Andromeda galaxy, we're going to see it 6 minutes apart, even though we're in the exact same place. And so, I mean, you can break it down to anything. If you don't want to break it down to revenue, it really comes down to what is the baseline thing that I can connect with this buyer on that shows that I know I'm not bullshitting you, right? Like, oh, well, I'm here to protect you from, XYZ. I'm here to harden your access points and do this. And it's like, well, everybody's telling me that. What is it that really allows you to come into my world? I tear my wall down and let you sell to me. And if you don't have a grasp of what it is, um, then you're not going to get in. It doesn't matter how good what the questions are. It doesn't matter how good of a tech you have. I'm just not going to listen to you. So you have to have some, I don't know if it's simplification or oversimplification, but you have to have some way to say, this is what I'm going to, the granular thing that I'm going to base my mission and purpose on so I can get into your world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. That takes a lot of self-reflection, which I don't think, several people have,
Mhm.
or do, and in general, teams do, is really take a step back and figure out what is our mission? How are we going to approach this? What is the vision? Is it defined both from an organizational standpoint and also a personal standpoint? Because to drive empathy as a person is very individual, it's very subjective. You can't, like, pigeonhole people into one way of understanding people because our brains function differently, if that makes sense. Let's break down kind of the red flags that we're seeing at RSA and how that's kind of disconnected from true understanding of the buyer.
Yeah. So I think a lot of on the floor itself, I've been pretty vocal about it as far as um, the the problem with like SISO. I get asked a lot because I don't know why people ask, hit me up in my email all the time. Like, how do we communicate with the CISO? How do we get in the CISO's inbox? How do we talk to the CISO? And it's like, why the fuck do you want to talk to the CISO? Like I looked at your buyers, half of them don't have one, so I don't know why you want to talk to them. But the thing with like how we're going to communicate with the CISO, right? You talk to 500 of them, you're going to get 647 different responses of what they expect on a personal level. And that doesn't do anything for you when you get on the floor and you've got all that noise and you've got all that chaos going on. So for me, it comes back to if you do have that purpose and that mission in play, you have that vision, right? And you can stick within that left and right boundary. You got goals that are attainable. I talked about there's most vendors they chase. I fucking hate acronyms. KPIs, right? Like our KPIs are X amount of conversations, X amount of bad scans, X amount of leads. Those are all objectives, and none of those are controllable. You cannot control any of that. You can control your behavior and you can control goals that you've set in place. Four, I'll give you four right now. You have the clearly defined mission and purpose. You don't come off as needy and pressuring. You don't, you make it so the buyer feels okay and safe in the conversation. And then finally, you make it easy for them to say no and walk away without feeling any sort of guilt or discomfort in potentially having to say that or hear that. Those are four easily obtainable goals that will set you apart from 95% of people. I don't care what the noise is. I don't care if it's the after party. I don't care if it's on the floor or talking with each other over breakfast at the hotel. If you can stick to just those four goals, you're already well ahead because when you see vendors go in here with no mission and purpose, and they're like, we got to hit these, not these goals, but we got to hit these results. We got to hit these objectives and we're not hitting them. We're on the second day and we're only 30% of the way there. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to start getting needy. We're going to start getting pushed. We're going to start compromising our values, right?
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself, how can I offer Jay Abraham's strategy preeminence? Like you're not a vendor. You're supposed to be the absolute best to them. Like they don't walk away from you with anything less than the best. So you
Yeah.
have to ask yourself, whatever situation you find yourself in when you're talking to one of those buyers is how can I stick to our values and our mission and purpose if I'm going to compromise
Yeah.
the neediness, and I'm going to compromise on pushing, and I'm going to turn this from a negotiation where they're safe walking away to, well, let's try to get a win-win here, right? Let's try to give and take. Because
Hmm.
at that point you're in the noise. The noise don't matter because you're just part of it. So
Yeah. I think that's important to distinguish. And before I ask my next question about the fourth goal, which is lead to the no,
mhm,
I just want to reiterate that people at these events aren't evaluating you logically. They're
mhm,
filtering out all this noise emotionally because this environment is so overstimulating. They're not evaluating the pitch. They're not sitting and looking at your booth, weighing the features, the benefits, comparing the bullet points that are listed on your booth, and they're not giving your message the full benefit of the doubt. What they're doing is they're making those emotional judgments at speed, right?
mhm. Yep,
And before they can even evaluate their product, they're going to be evaluating you, not
yep,
consciously, not analytically, right? They're going to be looking at you from a safety perspective. Is this a trap? Right? Are they trying to
yep,
hook me and then bait and switch? Are they going to pressure me? Can I just be honest here and just process the information? Or do I need to also perform too while they talk to me? Am I
mhm,
just another lead to them? So these are the like responses in the high stimulus environments that they're at. And by the way, it's not all buyers, right? It's
yep,
sometimes the people that are influencing the buying decision. So when someone is coming into a conference filled with so much noise, competition, and that salesy energy, right? They're viewing it as a threat
mhm,
or safety, right? It's kind of like this fight or flight response.
yep,
So I do want to kind of understand, as someone who's coming to RSA, who's going to be on the booth floor, repping the booth, or who's going to be networking at the lobby bars or at the happy hours, so on and so forth. Why is it important for them to kind of focus on even getting to a no? To me, that's really like self-actualization and a sign of maturity. What about it is so critical that we should be focusing on it now?
the no is the first honest thing you're going to have in that conversation, right? You got three possibilities. You got yes, no, and then the worst, which is maybe. Um, yes could be five different ways. They could be telling you yes because they're interested. They could be saying yes to get you away from them. They could be saying yes because they're uncomfortable saying no. They could be saying yes to just wrap it up, and they could have a myriad of reasons for what yes is. None of those are good, yet good answers, right? No one's going to decide on spending $50,000+ on your product at your booth at RSA. Like that's going to come down the road, and that's what not what we're aiming for here. And maybe is even worse. I would
Yeah.
say even worse, because what happens when you get a maybe? Okay, well now the emotion kicks in, and it's like, well, we can get them to the yes, then we're going to close this deal. I'm going to get that commission. Do I want to buy the Beamer? Do I want to buy the Tesla? And I'm going to start compromising my value. I'm going to start stepping back from my mission and purpose. I'm going to start going to that collective bargaining win-win scenario and try to push them to a yes that, again, isn't even a valid answer at this point. No is the best place to be because now we know, okay, now you're being honest. Now I can start asking questions and digging into that a little bit more and getting into your world. So it's very, for me, it's like you need to aim for that no, right? Because if they feel comfortable at that point that there's no pressure, then you have taken all that emotional feeling out of it, and now they're ready to talk to you.
Yeah.
Um, how I look at it, I follow the rule of 3 plus, and basically, it's usually the rule of three. I like 3 plus because I could go out to like 20 different confirmations of it. But basically, like until you've told me yes to the same thing 3 times, I'm not going to push it any further, right? So we'll go back to the example of I'm going to give a real world example here, of like the GRC compliance guy again, and I've got a dashboard, and you're a mid-sized business. You're I don't care what industry you're in, but you come up, you see my banner, and you're like, hey, I want to find out more about it. So how do I initiate that without pressuring you right off the bat? Well, you and I talked about verb led statements. So, big flag was would, should, can, do, if. Like those are all driving me to a point of you taking away my ability to veto, right? You're trying to push me into a position where I have to say yes, or I have to be really uncomfortable saying no. So you can steer me the direction you want. So how would you approach that for the no? Um, you come up to me, I'm the GRC vendor, and I say, we're dealing with, we talked to a few teams that are still using spreadsheets to track risk. Is that something you're dealing with? And you say, well, yeah, actually, that's a mess. Okay, well, I got my first yes. That's a curiosity response. And then I say, okay, so I know that impacts things internally. How is that affecting your team right now? And you say, well, audits are coming up. They're chaos. We're prepping for it. We're stressed about it. Now I've got the second yes. That's an emotional investment, right? And then I push it just a little bit further and I say, okay, well, that makes sense. Well, we built this dashboard to, answer that exact problem. It doesn't replace your controls, just gives you a place to actually see what's going on. And if you want to see it, totally up to you. And I can take 2 minutes to show you. And that there's no pressure there. You can say no and you can walk away from that. I'm not asking if you want to see it. I'm just leaving it up to you. And you can say, yeah, let's see it. That's my third one. That's the voluntary next step. And at that point, I would dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and go down that rabbit hole. Now, most vendors at that point, they would leap into, the big feature salad, right? Like you're sitting here looking at the demo and they're like, okay, well, we got this here. If you go click this tab here, you're going to see this. And you've completely killed it. That's why I talk 3+. So at that point, I would go into, hey, you mentioned, audits are chaos. So what does it look like 6 months from now if that's the case? And you say, well, it's probably going to suck, right? I'm really stressing about it, and leadership's getting jumpy. They don't trust us to begin with. They're already sketchy about what we're doing, and that's so I've now shifted into being a mirror instead of a hammer at that point, if that makes sense. I'm not forcing it on you. I'm still making it to where you have complete control of it.
Yeah.
And so those are all I'm aiming for the no in every single one of those scenarios. It's a very long, drawn out scenario, but each one of those points, every one of those touch points I had with you in that 5-10 minute span of communication, every one of them was a clear invitation for you to say, I don't want to go any further. I'm out.
I
You
think that yeah, go for it, sorry.
No, I would say you can always control the behavior of your mission and purpose of your vision. You can't control the buyers, right?
Yeah,
So don't try to. Just focus on yours. Don't put the cart before the horse, right?
right.
Your purpose is to just get into their world and get that, empathize with them and see what it is you actually need to empathize with, and if you are even the right fit.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that level of maturity, is very much recognized by practitioners in the buyer community, and I think what that does is lets the buyer understand what it's gonna be like working with you long term, because the most of the deals that I've seen in the security space, those are long cycles,
Mhm.
not just pre-sale, but
Yep.
during the actual onboarding and usage of the tools and services, those are multi-year deals. And so when you're kind of going through this push and pull and even disqualifying and saying, "You know what? Maybe we're not a right fit, but here's another
Yep.
competitor that you could work with happily." That to me, one, again, is a level of maturity that you don't see frequently, but is definitely resonant amongst buyers. But two,
That's qualified lead, right?
yes.
Even you saying go over, we're not the right fit right now. I'm telling you that we're going to be overkill, but go over and see so and so,
Yep.
because what's going to happen is they're going to go see so and so, but they trust you because you didn't see them as that
Yeah.
bad skin. And 6 months to a year, when they go over to so and so, who obviously isn't, showing that empathy, doesn't have that mission and purpose in place, and they're not happy, who are they going to look to? Well, Danny over here, I'm going to go try and see if I can get something,
Yeah.
with them and work with them.
Yeah, because yeah, exactly. These people, based off of that behavior, they're forecasting what it's gonna be like in the future for them.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the foundation for them. If they're already pushing me this hard, but there's no back and forth or push and pull,
Yeah.
this is probably what it's gonna be like working with them as a vendor. So I just always say be cognizant of that no and that self kind of reflection of are we giving them options as well, right?
Yeah.
I think that's critical. Okay, so let's go back. We've torn apart the old system and the way things are done status quo. We've talked about what to do now if someone is prepping for their RSA presence this upcoming week. Um, I do want to talk about let's see what I have here because I kind of went all over the place with regards to the order. Just kind of kept it super organic. Give me a second. Mm. Okay, you know what? Let's also talk about you're a direct response guy.
Mhm.
I want to kind of go off script here. We have always, our list of talking points. But as a direct response guy, we do see a lot of emails going out. We see a lot of outreach. We see a lot of, hey, are you going to be at RSA? Let's meet up, right? Which I don't think is super useful and rather annoying to a lot of practitioners and buyers. So let's break it down between pre, during, and post RSA. What, in your opinion and your experience as a direct response guy, is the right approach to email to kinda get that engagement, get that initial trust and credibility, and get the let's just call it the hook to start establishing the relationship and trust at the event, during the event, and post event.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you anybody that I currently have coming to my inbox who does email right. Um, I just got one from CrowdStrike today that I was like trying to decide. It's like with CrowdStrike, I play this game. It's called go to their website and see how long it takes me to fucking navigate it. The labyrinth is, David Bowie, Goblin King chases me through it and get to where I want to go.
Yeah.
But like I signed up for like a white paper off of CrowdStrike, showing interest in something that they're going to be talking about at one of these events. And I get, I first of all, I get no like really good confirmation other than like, hey, thank you for downloading this. Like you're dead. Like that's a prime opportunity for you to connect. And with like direct response, people always tell me like, oh, direct response is so old fashioned, and we're talking about all these old school, in your face, order now, buy now. It's not. Direct
Mhm.
response is literally just sell something right fucking now, right? Sell and not selling just the product. Sell me on the next step. Sell me, get me to take another action. Um, so what do I get when most vendors send me an email? And I know you've broken it down in your what the fuck did I just read? But it's like I get an email with 15 different things that you want me to do, right? You cast a wide net because you don't, again, we're coming back to like a broken record. You have no clear vision on what it is you do and who it is you help. And so you cast this wide net. Well, go, we're going to be here. Go to this webinar. We're going to go here. Get this thread report from 2025. We got this ebook on this. And it's like, no, which one do you want me to do? Just give me one clear step to take, right?
Mhm.
I told the story in my email today of like you were on like a steakhouse. You're like you make great steaks, and you got a food critic coming in, and this world famous food critic is gonna leave a review on your sirloin, and you're gonna get all these people coming in. And he comes in and he prepares steak and he put it on the table in front of him, and he looks at it, and he gets up and walks out, and he doesn't even eat it. And what do you run after him and you grab him by the arm and you get needy. You say, hey, come eat my
Yep.
steak. He gets mad and he writes a bad review and you don't get any business. All right. A good steakhouse knows I need to maximize the chances of him consuming my product. So he comes and sits down. I give him carb for carb heavy appetizers. I keep those hot buttery rolls coming. I give them good drinks to stimulate appetite. And then I get him as close as possible. I can't guarantee his behavior. He still doesn't have to eat the steak, but I make it as easy as possible for him to consume my content, consume my product. So up to RSA, right? Like, what steps are you giving them? These little micro conversions of saying, yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that. That sounds good to me. I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to go to the next one. And now I'm primed and ready to talk to you on the floor, right? So you're not doing that. Most vendors aren't doing that. They're not emailing enough. I email daily. I advocate for emailing daily. If you're an expert in your field, you should have plenty of stuff to talk about that shows me that you're not the expert, you're the leader. You're the one I should be following. Expert, you don't have to be an expert to be a leader. To be a leader, you just have to show up more often than everybody else, and people follow you. So showing up with very easy consumable steps that make me want to stay engaged with you, that you keep creating vision of what it looks like to take another step with you. And then we interact on the floor. We've talked about that. Now, post RSA, this is a real kicker, because I used to do this when I would go to conferences. I managed our active directory. I managed all of our stuff. So I would make, like, if I'm going to RSA or TechNet, I would be at zachary.hyde.technet@usarmy.mil. Right? I'd make just this burner email that you had to scan. You needed a business email. You scanned it. And then as soon as I got back, I just shut it off. Right? And I got nothing from you. And so I've seen a lot of people. I talked to you about, like, in the RSIZO thread Reddit, of like people's feelings on this year at RSA.
Yeah.
And that was like a common suggestion, was like, have your organization give you a burner so you can just block all of them from talking to you when you get back. Go to the after. Most everybody just wanted to go to the after parties, right? I'm not even talking. I'm just going to the after parties, gonna get my swag, and then I'm gonna go back and be none the wiser. They can't talk to me. So it really comes down to, on the floor, getting those, building that vision up, going through that process. And for me, I would even recommend, like, look, if this is really something you're interested in, write your email down, write it down. Because maybe I am interested in what you have to offer, because you followed the steps of making me comfortable and creating that vision. But I forgot that I've got my burner on this badge, and you ain't going to get to me. So nobody's most likely, if they want to talk to you again, they're not going to sit down and write down their burner. They're going to give you a good, valid email address. It's just a little friction point to slow them down and get some intention there. And then after, say you do that and you do have that contact information, how are you reaching out? For me, and this is where also I think it comes down to the buyer responsibility and knowing how to communicate with vendors. I always I listen to some of the folks you've had on, and it's like, well, they called me and they didn't say zippity doodah and rub their stomach 3 times. And it's like, okay, well, you're a fucking idiot. Like, everybody, that's their job, right? Maybe they didn't do it right, but you also didn't give me any good feedback on how to improve it.
Yeah.
So for me, when I would go to a booth, I knew I was never going to use the tool, or most likely wasn't going to use the tool. So I'd get the pitch, I'd see the product, and I'd say, listen, here's my email. Shoot me an email in a few days. Let me decompress, and then tell me, hey, it's Tom. I talked to you. If I get an email from Mark at your company, who I didn't even talk to, well, then that's a flag to me. Like, you just fit me into CRM and start tasking people with blasting out emails. But if you're like, hey, it's Tom, we talked, we said to email you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to forward you to the guy on my team who's going to use you. And I'm going to have him talk to you. I'm going to have him go through the demo. And then if he likes it, it's kosher, he's going to come to me, say, this is what I want to do. And then we're going to move forward from there, if it's something that's viable for us.
Right.
So that also is, that's twofold, I think, on the vendor side, but also on the buyer side, of saying, like, I'm here. They took their time to come here to even if I'm just like, oh, I'm a curmudgeon and I don't like being sold to. Like, it's their job they're here they've got the mission and the purpose to make your life better.
Right.
Um, so you kind of, you need to listen.
Right.
Um, don't go there and be like, well, I'm gonna grill them and see if they brought their most technical guy here to give me the deets. I mean, their most technical guy is probably back home making shit happen and
Yep.
work and keeping it running. They're not going to send him to the table. So like expecting that is ridiculous.
Right.
So knowing how to be like, hey, listen, I like this. Here's a clear path on how you can communicate with me afterward. And like I said, for me, that was my way, right?
Mhm.
That got you in touch with the person that was closest to the pain point. If you're relieving, you have a dashboard that sucks in all my alerts in my SOC. Well, I'm going to forward you to my SOC lead, right? He's the
Mhm.
one dealing with it. He's the one stressed out every night about it. He's the one that can give me accurate feedback on if this is going to improve the organization. And at that point, then I go higher and I advocate for you.
All right, I do wanna shift our conversation to the fun part of the episode, not that, what we talked about wasn't fun, but this is the rapid fire segment of Audience First Podcast. I'm gonna shoot some questions towards you, and you answer what's top of mind real quick. We're gonna
Okay.
go through this in about 5 minutes. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's go. What's the worst way to prep for RSA if you claim to be buyer first?
Worst way to prep if you claim to be buyer first is to go in there with set quantitative KPIs and with the intent to meet them. You're already dead in the water. I wouldn't even show up if your leadership says that's your goals to meet. I would say this is invalid and stupid, and I would readjust that. No quantitative KPIs like that.
I think it's, I'm gonna be joining in on this session, by the way, too. I think it's, building messaging in a vacuum, running, deck reviews with no single buyer conversation before the event, and then saying, "Oh, we've done the discovery because we looked at our previous year's pipeline data." Okay. Cringiest behavior you've seen from a rep on the floor?
Cringiest behavior. I have been fortunate enough to miss out on all the inappropriate stuff. But I would say um, trying to get me into like an interview, making me like pulling me into like, hey, we're gonna interview, we're gonna make this, or we're gonna use this, and pressuring me into like putting a camera in front of my face and saying, hey, we're recording this. We want to talk to you
Mhm.
about our product, which I don't even know what it is,
Yeah.
and thoughts on it. And it's like you like what who I'm just here for the t-shirt, man. Like I don't have anything to do with you. So yeah, the theatrics
Mm,
would for me.
yeah. For me, it's, and I'm so looking forward to this year because 'cause I'm gonna do it back to people, is when you get the, like, locked in eye contact and you're walking and they're
Yeah.
still looking at you and you feel super awkward. That to me is, like, so cringe. Okay, fastest way to make your booth feel, uh, safe.
Just let me walk up to it and
Yeah.
and come up and ask me, hey, what brings you here? Why are you at RSA today? What's your interest here? Don't swarm me with a bunch of folks that are pressuring me.
Mhm.
Don't I would even say I was joking with George Snapper about this the other day of like I wish a vendor would show up with just a fold out table and like a banner that they made in like old word art with the rainbow font.
Oh,
And like
yeah, and then, like,
one
curved.
yeah, and like one physical, ugly black and white sales letter on their table, and everybody has to read one at a time, and just like be completely ugly, right? And
Mhm.
just boring, right? That right there, I'm just like, well, I would love to come, and I would probably be upset because I've got 5 people in front of me that have to read about your product, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out what's going on. So no pressure. Don't approach. Let me come up, and if I look like I'm interested, then start out with that right question.
As long as there's a place to sit down because the feet hurt. That's
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
like, yeah, just let me have a seat and leave me alone. All right. What's the worst follow-up message someone can send after RSA?
The worst follow-up message would be, well, I would say just booking a demo. Like again, nobody's coming to RSA and willing to. I would say even book the demo from that point. I would say just follow up and say, hey, we talked. This is what we talked about. If you're still interested, can you point me to the right person on your team to talk to?
Yeah.
Because most likely the person you're following up with that showed up isn't the right person to use the product. And saying like, hey, I'm not trying to take your time. I know you're busy. Send me to whoever I need to talk to, and I'll get out of your hair.
Yep. For me, it's sending a message in the first place because I've already said, "Don't send me a message." And I know a lot of people say, "Don't send me a message," but they do it anyway. And then
Yeah,
they spell your name wrong because they inserted it,
yeah,
incorrectly into the CRM and didn't note, "Don't send in info," because they opted out verbally. Anyway,
yeah, yeah.
what's one enablement myth that sets teams up to fail empathetically on the floor?
One enablement that sets them up to fail empathetically on the floor, I would say, um, leaning really hard into the data and relying on that and going in and saying, hey, like this is what we've collected over the past, like 6 months leading up to this. So these are our talking points. So then we get there and we approach, you're approaching your buyers or prospects with something that, like I said, they're not static. So the best thing you're going to be able to do if you really want to be empathetic is to say, like, hey, I don't know anything about you, but my job here is to make sure everybody has the best possible outcome. How can I do that?
For me, it's that presence equals good energy. So teams come super
Yep.
pumped up and then they don't regulate throughout the show. So they're
Yeah.
in at a high, then at a low because they're not seeing the outcomes that they're expecting,
Yeah.
but aren't really aligned with buyer
Yeah.
expectations. They show up then as loud, as drunk, as amped up, extroverts trying to own the room, when they're not looking for those signals of the audience who are already overstimulated and, probably emotionally drained anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
You don't need to build up your brand identity to be something that you're not.
yeah,
I'm not there for that. Your brand comes from the service you provide me, and if you actually work,
yep,
and then from then I sell you and I build your brand internally.
yep, 100%. Alright, what's the, most common way vendors blow it at happy hours or the hotel lobby bar combos?
I would say, uh, I would go back to that same energy and like thinking that we're at the happy hour, so we can let our hair down and we can approach this as a friendship or as a relationship. Um, and you at that point again, you run the risk and a very dangerous risk of now having to compromise your vision and your mission and purpose later because now say you do let your hair down, you have a few drinks and you have that back and forth and then it comes time post RSA when you communicate and there's an expectation there, right? Maybe on your side or maybe on theirs of what they got from that. And so for me, it would just be, maintain that vision and that mission and purpose, even if you're not on the floor. If you're just passing each other, if you're sitting on the train together, taking Uber together, you're at the after party, you know, that if you stick to that and you stick within those left and right limits, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, yeah. Showing up to me, it's showing up or becoming sloppy frat bro drunk. Again, these people are framing right now how you are going to behave as a potential partner in the future. That people remember that shit, so don't
Yeah.
do that.
You can get drunk
Uh,
when you get back home.
yeah, 100%. While you're writing your direct response,
Yeah.
uh, what makes a panel or actually, let's focus just on the panel. What makes a panel instantly feel like bullshit versus real value.
What makes them feel like bullshit versus real value? Is it anchored in what actually is it anchored in you and what you're trying to accomplish, or is it anchored in what actually your audience is looking for? And again, it goes back to like it's very subtle. What you think is, we're doing this for our buyers, but you're not communicating that. You're communicating it in terms of how it benefits you as the organization. Um, Being able to differentiate between that and make sure that everything that goes out is solely placed inside of the world that your buyers live in.
I agree. I think to add to that, it's also those panels that focus on the speaker buyers longer than the actual presentation. So we all want to feel good about ourselves. So let's talk about ourselves for a good freaking 30 minutes. The second would be zero audience participation. I think a panel should include audience and also differing views. So if someone's going to actually be on a panel, push back versus another panelist too. Like panels packed with vendors who all agree, I think is stale. I think is
Yeah.
unrealistic. I think there has to be differing thoughts and opinions.
And I,
Um,
I I would expect you to be unbiased. That's what kills a lot of content.
mhm.
Read a top of the funnel white paper I downloaded from a stock as a service company, and it's like 32 mentions of the company and the product within like 10 pages of this white paper. Like I don't I like I'm not here to hear what you do specifically. I want to hear as a collective what the solution is for me, and have the opportunity to weigh that and go which way is right for us. So yeah, definitely not so much the buyer like this is what we do and this is how we feel about it, but this is what we identified, and here's some possible solutions.
100%. All right, final thoughts before we sign off. What's one thing that those who are listening in today can take away and do differently that actually moves the needle on building that empathy muscle and trust with buyers?
Don't concern yourself with the decks and the system that your leadership's pushing down. Don't concern yourself with fucking what magic quadrant people are on, or trends, or anything like that. Only if you even if you've got the worst deck possible, if you keep the mindset that, hey, those four goals I set, right? Make sure they feel comfortable saying no. Make sure they feel safe in the conversation. Um, Make sure that that you're not being needy, and make sure you stick within that vision and you only live your focus on that which you can control. You're gonna be fine, right? You're gonna deal with people that are probably gonna be difficult, but that's that, right? That's their vision. They have the wrong vision, and you can't help that. You just stick with yours, and you're gonna be fine regardless of they're like you can control that. You can control how you steer that conversation and how you make them feel. You can't control the deck your boss gives you, but you also don't have to follow that to a T, because you know better, because you know what you're going to get results from, and that's ultimately what's going to happen at the end of the day. Is you can go back and say, look, we got the results, and this is why.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Now, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you and pick your brain a little bit more deeply?
So if you go to my Zachary Hyde Writer .com is my website. Why don't I have a website? I hate maintaining it. So that's just going to take you to my opt-in and get you on my email list. I email daily. If you get on my email list, you have the opportunity to back and forth with me. I talk all the time through the inbox. If you're not on my email list and you try to reach out to me, I'm probably going to tell you to go kick rocks until you do that, because I got other stuff to do. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I push daily newsletters out on LinkedIn as well. So there's the two places probably you're best communicate with me, and I'm pretty responsive. So if you've got questions, if you've got little things that I can help you with that are not in the scope of you actually having to pay me to do it for you, I'm always happy to help.
Amazing. I love this conversation. You know where to find me, folks. Dani Woolf on LinkedIn. Visit audiencefirst.fm. That's audience1st.fm. And if you're interested in downloading the Empathy Codified OS RSA Conference Edition, I'm going to drop that in the links here. Take a look at it. Spend a lot of time going through it. This is a great first starting point, validated by Mr. Zachary Hyde here as well, and other buyers in our space. So thank you for listening today. For those of you who are at RSA next week, hit me up. Let me know that you're going to be there. Yeah, good luck next week. I'm rooting for all of you. Make it count. Zach, thanks for joining me today. You're always welcome to the show. And hopefully we'll see you at one of those big events
Yeah, thank
one of
you.
these days.
I just burned through my third cup of coffee. I'm still amped. So there's a great call. So
Yes, 100%. Totally agree. All right. Thanks, everybody. This has been another episode of Audience First. We are out.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.